Okay. Hello, sisters, for the 1 billionth time today. So I'll just wait a sec till some of you get here. Ugh, I'm so annoyed with myself. Like, when I try and schedule the streams, like, all, like, in the same playlist, with, like, matching thumbnails, with, like, the descriptions all cohesive and shit. And then, like, they just don't work, and I have to just, like, start a new stream, and it doesn't have, like, the thumbnail and, like, the description and, like, all my settings. It's just, like, a random live stream. I don't know. My lord, what is going on, baby? I know. I think it's my bad. Um, I don't know what the fuck happened. I think that I must have been when I tried to open it on OBS that I somehow turned off. No, I think that I never use kids mode, obviously. I always set all my videos not for kids, obviously. I think I somehow turned that on when I was trying to access the videos through OBS. Anyway. Okay. No. Because, okay, listen. When I schedule all of these that are scheduled, when I schedule them, I'm like live chat, not for kids, blah, 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 all these things. Then I went to open it and it's like all the settings are different, but I don't realize that until I'm streaming. So, whatever the fuck. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, enough of that shit. Okay, so the book. I have to say, I thought. Stop Kamotashio. I thought that the essay today was like much more constructive. Not that it's like my place to be having tons of opinions about Latina lesbians, but at least it was like, look, I'm referring to this principle or theory or whatever, and then also contrasting it with this principle or theory or whatever. And then it was like, look, here's like some basis for why I think the way I do about things about Latina lesbians. And then it was like, this is my conclusion. I don't know. It's just like much more cohesive and coherent than the last fucking essay. Also, though, just because who was here for this? Ah, too many fucking books. Can't even get it out of the bookshelf. As if it's possible to have too many books. Anyone who was here for this whole essay, I was like flashbacking to this. Because, like, she's like obsessed with the Cubanness of her girlfriend. But it did remind me, like, so remember oh my god, what's her name? Lima? Anna. Yeah. Anna, or Anna, or whatever, who's in this. Remember how she kept all the lesbian stuff she did was like multicultural, right? Or like not culture specific or ethnicity specific. And then at some point, Kelly was like, it was when all that drama went down with the Bronx lesbians and the Harlem lesbians, and there was like all that stuff, and they were like, you guys are racist. Remember how after that, for the first time ever, Anna went specifically to hang out with all the lesbians of color? And she talks about, like, like, the way the food was and the music was and, like, the atmosphere, and, like, we just, like, talked and, like, everything. So what she was talking about was, like, culturally, the atmosphere was so different. And she I just remember that part of the book when she came home from that, because remember, she went to this thing in, like, Harlem or whatever, and she was gone for, like, 7 hours, and Kelly was like, "What the fuck happened? Like, where did she go?" And when she came back, she was just like, "I was so comfortable, and I was enjoying myself so much, like, I just, like, didn't wanna leave, I, like, lost track of time, like, I was just enjoying myself." And before that, when Anna was leaving, she was like, "I don't know if this is a good idea, like, I never really saw the point of, like, separating ourselves by ethnicity and blah, blah, blah," right? Then when she comes home, it's like she had a revelation from this experience, right? Um, I thought of that when I was reading this chapter, this experience of Anna Simo in this book, because I think when you compare that to the essay we just read, it's like, I mean, obviously it has to do with like the era and the politics of what was happening in Cuba at the time. But when Ana Simo left Cuba, she was very much like, I'm a citizen of the world now. Like, I'm not like a Cuban. Like, she was, but she wasn't. You know what I'm saying? That was like the attitude she had after she left Cuba. And so you could it's just, I don't know, it got me thinking, like, in the essay the author is kind of like, like, how do you balance like your lesbian identity and your Hispanic identity? And it seems like for Anna Simo and that up till that point, she had been like completely being like the one with the lesbians are the matter because also Anna Simo is like a feminist. So I guess in her mind it was like, priorities. Women, lesbians are women, that thing. But it's like because she hadn't like what was the term they used? Integrated her identities. It wasn't until she was like in that situation with only like women of color or ethnic minority lesbians that she was like, "Oh shit. This is nice. This is like a thing that I enjoy in my life." Right? So yeah, I don't know. Um okay. Let's do kind of like a blow by blow. Oh no, not this. Let's do kind of like a blow by blow of this. I think it should be much more focused than yesterday because even though I've been up for like 12 hours now, well, no, 11 hours now, um, I'm definitely not as tired as I was yesterday. And I feel like I'm kind of on a roll with the reading today. I would like to try. Let me actually check. Okay, this one is 56 to 72. Ooh, the next essay is like 20 pages, but this essay was like 15 and it wasn't that bad. I think I'm gonna read the next essay today. Why not? I'll just take like a little bit of break between them. Okay. Oh, Kaz, the kids thing is because people were like, there's all these predators on social media, going after the children's and all of the fucking. Oh my god, today at work, these people came in with their little kids and like, that's who cares? That's good. That's fine. The kids, they were like, oh yeah, this and this and this because TikTok, this and this and this because TikTok. And the kids were like 7 years old. And I was like, your 7-year-olds are on TikTok? Do you know what the fuck is on there? Yeah. Anyway, the thing with the YouTube is that they're trying to like separate YouTube out so that if you give your kids the YouTube Kids app, they will not see anything that is not for kids. Like that's why it's like that. But yeah. The whole thing is pointless because the age thing is pointless. I agree. Okay. Okay, actually, you know what? Before we get started, no, I'm not on OBS. I was so excited to use the screen share thing today. Okay, before we get started, let's read a little bit about Olivia Espin. I know it was in the description. What? No, I agree, Julia. Like when I watched that, I was like, when I saw that today, I was like, um, so if I had kids, I would never. Why is the whole description fucking gone? What the fuck is going on, man? I don't know what the fuck's happening, man. Yeah, if I had kids, I wouldn't let them have smartphones till they were 18. They wouldn't have any internet access aside from like email or something until they were like 18. Alrighty. Okay. Olivia M. Espín is a professor of counseling psychology in the Boston area. She has written and consulted widely on the subject of Latin women or Latina women. During 1981 to 1983, she held a fellowship from the National Institute of Mental Health to study Hispanic women healers. She also works in private practice, primarily with Latina women. Oh, she has a wiki page. Let's see what the wiki page says. Boston University, San Diego State. Oh, she's also Cuban. Okay, I suspected, but I also was like, maybe she just chose Cuban women because she was in Miami or something. Um, She did her postdoc shit at Harvard. Wow. Um. Oh, she used to be a professor at McGill. Okay, but this is not telling me. Okay, so there's no like personal information on here. I mean, I assume she's a lesbian, but I guess she's basically just an academic, like entirely an academic, which is fine. Okay, well, so yeah, her entire background is like very, like just by the places she went to university and stuff, very Latin. Well, until her PhD. Anyway, okay, so we know a little bit about her. She's a psychologist or counseling and psychology professor. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, the internet is a bad thing. I agree. Okay. So, because as a Latina she is an ethnic minority person, she must be bicultural in American society. Because she is a lesbian, she has to be polycultural among her own people. The dilemma for Latina lesbians is how to integrate who they are culturally, racially, and religiously with their identity as lesbians and women. The identity of each Latina lesbian develops through conscious and unconscious choices that allot relative importance to the different components of the self, and thus to her identity as a woman, as lesbian, as Latina. So, like when she first, hey Corner, good to see you again. When she first brought up the kind of like this, that, like the two, right? Like the two cultures or subcultures or whatever, right? I was like, "Oh, so this is gonna be about how lesbians, like, straddle how Latina lesbians straddle the 2 cultures." But it's not really. The essay is more about, well, you had to pick one, kind of, and, oh, bye, Rachel. Is Rachel going? Bye, Rachel. Um, and so, like, whichever one you picked, if you picked the Latin one, then you are kind of internalizing their negative associations of your homosexuality. If you have chosen the like Anglo, as she calls it in the essay, the Anglo homosexual community or Anglo lesbian community, then you are going to be internalizing their racist. Like, so she's kind of like either way you go, you have to like take the good with the bad. I mean, the bad with the good, right? Which I don't know. I thought that was like an interesting. I'm glad the way she explained it that way. It was interesting. Okay. Um, I feel like it expanded my understanding of things. I also like the way she uses identity because it's not bullshit. Like this essay to me seems much more practical than the last essay. Um, the term identity is understood here as that which each woman tells herself about who she is when she is alone with herself. So identity is your self-perception. Yeah, that seems like a good way to describe it. Okay. So, but then she talks also about how identity is like your self-perception is obviously performed by your like society that you're in and how they perceive you once you've internalized of how they perceive you. So it's like not like just the internal. It's like the internal reflects the external kind of thing. Okay, then she talks about this Erickson. So according to Erickson, I have to say, um, I'm all for like referencing theories and principles and whatever. Like I said, but everything she references is by men. And it's like, if that's what there is to reference, then of course, good for you. But also, I would prefer if it was not by men. Also, something I noticed in the essay, there's at least 2 or 3 times in the essay where she's like, yes, Latina lesbians like to associate with people who are also lesbians. Or something like this. And I was like, you're literally talking about people who could only be women, and yet you chose a gender neutral like people instead of women. And I was like, that's a bit like aggravating. Okay. I'm surprised that I just thought that this Olivia Espín would be in the Boston Lesbian Psychologies Collective because she's from Boston. She was teaching at Boston College at the time of this. Um, I think, yeah, but she's not. Oh, anyway, okay. So it's Erickson. So he says that an integrated identity consists of quote a state of being and becoming that can have a highly conscious and indeed self-conscious quality, yet remain. It is in its motivational aspects quite conscious and beset with the dynamics of conflict, end quote. Because part of identity must be accounted for in that community within which an individual finds himself, there may be fragments that the individual had to submerge in himself as undesirable or irreconcilable, or which his group has taught him to perceive as the mark of a fatal difference in sex role or race or class, sex role or race in class or religion. This is like how she brought up. Remember how at the very end, in the conclusion, there's like one page where she's like, "What does this mean for psychotherapy?" Right? And she was like, um, well, something along the lines of, if you're going to do therapy with your client in Spanish, you need to be aware. You need to be aware that, like, if you're using like Spanish words for things that have to do with lesbians, that your client has probably only ever heard those in a negative way, and these all have negative connotations to her, right? Um, so this is kind of when he's saying this, that's what makes a lot of sense to me. It's like you can't even speak or think about it in your native language, your native tongue, your first tongue, whatever, without without the negative aspects of it. Okay. Okay, then she brings up this Donald Atkinson, George Morton, and Daryl Wing Sue have evolved a model of identity development for ethnic minorities that captures the fluidity of the process and can describes its phases in a clear and concise way. Vivian Cass has developed a similar theoretical model in reference to homosexual identity formation. Okay, I like the table and everything, but I wish that since she's this Atkins, George, and Sue model, and then she's also talking about this Cass model. I wish that she had the two models like beside each other in the same chart. Um, but here's the chart again. Eh, okay. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to read this chart. Okay, I'm gonna read in columns going down. Okay, so attitude towards the self. Also, I found it really interesting while reading about this minority identity development model, how it was so easy to superimpose the development of the gay movement, like historically, like in the last 200 years or whatever. It was so easy to like ascribe the development of the gay movement onto this identity model. It's very interesting to me. Okay, so state one is conformity. The attitudes, I'm going to read the column attitudes towards the self. Okay, so attitude towards the self in state one, conformity, self deprecating. In state two, dissonance, conflict between self depreciating and self appreciating. Stage 3, resistance and immersion, self appreciating. Stage 4, introspection, concerns with basis of self appreciation. Stage 5, synergistic articulation, is self appreciating. So basically, it's like a slow, um, uh, It's like a gradual thing. Okay, I'm gonna read the second last column now. This column is called Attitude Towards Others of Different Minority. So in state one, conformity, the attitude towards others is discriminatory. So you view them truly as other, I think. In state two, dissonance, conflict between dominant held views of minority hierarchy and feelings of shared experience. Okay. Stage three, resistance and immersion. Then the attitude is conflict between feelings of empathy for other minority experiences and feelings of cultural centrism. So it's this is so interesting to me. Like the psychological concept of identity that has nothing to do with wokeness. Like when reading this, like go from discriminatory to conflict between dominant held views and minority hierarchy and feelings of shared experience. Two, conflict between feelings of empathy for other minority experience and feelings of culturocentrism. Two, concern with ethnocentric basis for judging others. Two, in stage five, the synergistic articulation, group appreciating. It literally is like an integration of the self. Like a like this to me, it's like it's kind of a graph of like how to self-actualize, but they're calling it an identity development model. It's very interesting to me. Because when they talk about identity development, like everything I'm reading, I can't stop comparing it to trans. When they talk about identity development in this, like, okay, when I first was reading like this whole like, yeah, like the synergistic articulation and like the blah, 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 I was like, okay, how easy would it be to like twist this into like a brainwashing tool? Or at least get a lot of information out of it to make a brainwashing tool. Pretty easy, I think. So I was like cautiously optimistic about what is this um model. But actually reading it, maybe it's just the language they're using or how broad it can be applied. But it really is like from like self-hate to self-acceptance. From like discrimination towards people who you view as having like the wrongness that you have to accepting the wrong, like the whatever special thing it is that you have. From like feeling like this attitude toward dominant group, like you can go back and read the chart yourself. From this, like, I am part of this group, so I must conform to like I am an individual, so I can choose which group I'm in. It seems like very healthy to me. Okay, anyway, let's keep going. All right. Something I did find weird though, um, well, I can't find it now, but oh, hear this. Desire to eliminate all forms of oppression becomes an important motivation of the individual's behavior. Okay, I'm not saying that's not the case. For gay people, that's obviously the case a lot of the time. But I am very hesitant to link like what is being discussed in this essay is like a sense of self, right? Like the sense of self that Latina lesbians have. Really, that's what I think is being discussed here. To me, I'm very hesitant to put that in like a political like okay. Obviously when it comes to like race and sexuality, things are very political. But I'm very hesitant to like politicize specifically like the sense of self. Like that's what the wokeness fucking did. Um and I also like I know it's alienating. Like I I can't even name a conservative gay person that I know or I'm friends with at the moment, actually. But I've talked to conservative gay people before, and a lot of them have told me, you know, um, like if I want to hang out with just gay people, which like obviously a lot of gay, like almost all gay people will find some benefit from that, right? They're like, to do that, I need to accept like that everyone in that space is going to assume a certain political stance of me and they're going to speak as if everybody in that room has that political stance, and basically it's very alienating. Um, and so to me, especially when you come from like a psychotherapeutic um perspective, that to me can be like a very like I'm sure for us, right? Like if you went into a therapist office and you were like, "Yeah, I'm having like issues accepting my lesbian identity or whatever." I'm sure if they were like, "Oh yeah, so you want to like fight oppression?" You'd be like, "What? This is like therapy." And I would be like, "You so clearly cannot separate your politics from your job that I don't trust you." Anyway. Okay. Anyway, I noticed that. I think she mentions that like two times maybe, and it was very interesting to me. Okay. Um yeah, I want to look up this Vivian Cass homosexual identity development model. Okay. Um So didn't want to reread the paragraph here, so I have found like a point form list of this CAS model of sexual orientation identity formation. Whatever this is, what is this? CSUDH. This website, I think it's like a university that has linked this like it's like a paper for a reference. Oh, Safe Spaces Training 2011. Okay. Because it has references for things that are like, 2010 and stuff. Okay. So the CAS model of sexual orientation identity formation is based on work with gays and lesbians in Australia. Process of movement through the stages combines personal needs with biological sex drive and variables such as class and race. Not all individuals will progress through all stages. Individuals can either progress to the next stage or end in the current stage. Okay. Is grief like that? I don't know much about like the stages of grief, like in an academic sense. Okay. So, the first stage, identity confusion. In this stage, a sense of incongruence, conflict between their perception of themselves as heterosexual and the realization of gay or lesbian thoughts and feelings develops. A time of curiosity, confusion, and anxiety of this initial awareness. Okay, 1 second. Okay. The second stage, identity comparison. So, first was confusion, now is comparison. In this stage, the person begins to accept the possibility of having a predominantly gay or lesbian orientation and moves from confusion and incongruence towards addressing the social alienation resulted from a commitment to being gay or lesbian. Can result in feelings of being ostracized or a sense of relief. This is very similar to the other things. I appreciate that she compared and contrasted these two because they're very similar. This like identity formation thing. Okay. The third stage is called identity tolerance. In this stage, the person begins to admit to him or herself that he or she is probably gay or lesbian. This helps the person decrease identity confusion and allows him or her to pursue more of his or her own emotional, social, and sexual needs. So this is like they're starting to prioritize themselves and their own thoughts and feelings and not just fitting into the group. Interesting. Okay. Um This person seeks out contacts and friends in the gay and lesbian community and has a chance to see positive role models. If the contacts are positive, he or she will probably be more accepting of gay or lesbian sexual identity. Okay. The fourth stage, called identity acceptance. In this stage, the individual increases contact with other gay or lesbian people and accepts a gay or lesbian identity. Shh. The inner sense of self is still tenuous. Interesting. Oh, apparently this cast thing is from 1996. Wait, what? No, because this book was published in 1987. I guess this cast person, whoever she is, published more things afterwards. Okay. Incongruity, incongruity and alienation often continues because of the lack of acceptance by the heterosexual community. The person may be able to fit into both the gay or lesbian and straight world. For some individuals, this strategy works and they successfully live their lives at this stage. Okay. Okay, the fifth stage, identity pride. People at this stage reject strategies to hide their sexual orientation and often reject heterosexual values and institutions, often a stage of activism against perceived oppression. People's reactions by okay, that I kind of get, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be like political. Like I think in this context, like oppression can be like it can be very like broad term because I think this just means like the ability to come out. It's not necessarily like a political type thing, you know what I mean? I think I need more language when it comes to politics, but you know what I'm trying to say. Okay. Um, Personal reactions by heterosexual friends and others in this stage can be both positive and negative. If reactions are generally negative, then the person tends to stay in this stage. So identity acceptance is the state of like, oh, I need to do something about this. I need to come out. I need to like meet gay people, whatever. Identity pride is like actually trying to come out and actually trying to be gay. Okay, then the sixth stage. The sixth stage is identity synthesis. In this stage, the us and them mentality gives way to a more differentiated view. I definitely have not reached this stage. I have a very us versus them mentality about the straights, to be honest with you. Feelings of pride continue, but the person comes to recognize that the dichotomy between gay and straight world is not as clear cut as he or she previously perceived. I don't know, you have to consider that this was written by a therapist, right? So, when you consider the last essay, where that freaking lady was all like, well, like, some lesbians are lesbian, but like they only sleep with men, and so like maybe we shouldn't invalidate them, and they blah. And this whole like, well, I can see like, you know, you sound tired. I'm pretty tired. I don't think I'm gonna read any more today. Or if I do, maybe it'll be the murder mystery. Um, Also, Aqua, thank you for commenting on that one video. I deleted the video, but it was because it was like a 2-minute test. But thank you for commenting because it helped me to not do what I did again. uh, yeah. Now I'll read the very last point of the last stage. Personal and public views of self are synthesized, and a person's sexual identity becomes less important as the sexual identity is integrated into all other aspects of self. Um, I can't wait till I move because like the door situation will be completely different. Also, like you guys always hearing like cello and piano and shit. Like I don't think that'll be a thing based on the layout of like the floors and the rooms of the new house. Yeah. Um I have to be honest with you, I don't have much thoughts about shoulder pads. My main thought about shoulder pads is that Scully is hot as shit and she wears shoulder pads. That's my main thought about shoulder pads, to be honest with you. Um, Turf World is so sad today. Why is Turf World sad today specifically? Julia, do you not know? I mean, Scully from the X Files. Okay. Yeah, so I think that because this is written by therapists, I think therapists kind of have the same problem that sexologists have, and that's that if you like sit and look at one thing for like 20 or 30 years, your perspective on it gets kind of like, I don't know, like warped. So this whole like, like we're different but we're all the same or whatever, this kind of thing. Um I don't know. I feel it's kind of stupid, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, okay, let's move on. So, my god, Mom. Also, the next place we moved, I signed like a really long lease. I'm literally thinking that I should replace the door in my bedroom and put like with like another door that I buy myself and put like a cat like flap thing on it. Cause like this situation of constantly getting up to open the door for Momo, like when I'm streaming, is like makes me want to murder someone. So oh yes, Aqua. I saw that. I think I must have blocked it out. I did see that today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So then she talks a bit about how, like, this is obviously not specific to Latina lesbians, either of these models of the ethnic minority identity integration and the. All right. I just feel like it's very unbalanced. I don't know. And the homosexuality identity integration model, neither of them are like specific, but she is like, because there's nothing else, this is what I'm gonna like base on my shit on. Um, Also, I find this very funny, especially considering when this was written. So she is like, oh wait, was that not? Oh no, those are Puerto Ricans. Never mind. So they were Cuban. But there's like a quote here that says, they found that, quote, rejection of homosexuals appears to be the dominant attitude of the Puerto Rican community, end quote. No, where's that other? That's not the one I was looking for. Well, whatever. At some point in this section, the concept that like a woman is quoted saying like, you know, like Hispanic women. I thought it was Puerto or Cuban, so I guess it's not this section. I don't know what it is. Hispanic women of my culture, they're not lesbians. It's when they come to America that they catch the lesbianism. So this kind of like, lesbophobic concept that lesbianism is like a sickness that is like spread. The reason I found that kind of like weird, like obviously it's not like shocking or anything, but the reason I found it kind of interesting is because, you know, in the 50s, At least I'm pretty sure it was the Communist Party. Oh fuck, I totally forgotten who exactly they are. Well, whatever. In the 50s, which is like the time period that some of these women emigrated from Cuba to America, the official position of the American Communist Party or whatever the fuck it was, collective or whoever they were, was that homosexuality was a symptom of opulence, of excess. That in a society without excess, there would be no homosexuality. So their view was that homosexuality was like, you know, a bourgeoisie phenomenon. And it's just weird to me that, like, I'm pretty sure it was a Cuban woman who said that in this essay because they're coming from a communist country at that time, right? I don't know. It was just kind of a really strange juxtaposition of the situation in my mind. Oh, then she talks about the idea that a lot of the she is theorizing or hypothesizing that a lot of Latina lesbians are much more highly educated than other women, Latina women, because in her view, like I'm not gonna find it, but she is like, um, you know, for Latin in Latin culture, family is very important. Obviously, what this means for the women is that, you know, having babies and being in the family is like very important. But if you're not married to a man, you're not having babies, then you're not committing as much time to family. So what do you have left? You have your career. So she is like, based on like, first of all, the respondents of the survey, who were all highly educated, or pretty highly educated, especially in the 80s. Like that seemed like right. Um, but it makes a lot of sense. I've heard this kind of like theory postulated before, not about Latin lesbians, but lesbians generally. Like, as soon as it was legal for women to go to school, I've heard it theorized like a lot of lesbians did that because a lot of lesbians were like, I want to, you know, get some kind of a qualification that I can like financially support myself because their plan had nothing to do with marrying men. So they were like the first ones doing like whatever they could to like support themselves, right? So I've heard this kind of theory before. I don't know if there's anybody who's like written a book about that or something. It'd be so fucking interesting to read. Well, I already have like 55 books I need to read, but whatever. Okay. Um I also love she was like here like she's like these are the reasons that Hispanics families might give why their daughter isn't married to a man. She is too intelligent to marry any man. She is too dedicated to her work to bother with dating, marriage, or motherhood. So it's like, you know, women need like an excuse to not be dick pandering all the time. Okay. I actually like was staying with a family in Mexico for a few weeks, like 6 weeks, like oh my god, is it 5 years? Holy shit. Holy shit, it's been 5 years? Oh. Um and one of the Julia, are you Serbian? Why are you bringing up Serbia? What's happening? Anyway, um there was one butch lesbian in the family and everybody acted, hey Grey Witch, long time no see. Everybody acted like, well, obviously this person is a man. And I was like, but it's they like it wasn't even like they were like literally just like a fucking woman. Like they weren't even like butch butch. They were just like kind of masculine. And it's like I think that was like the family's way of coping with the fact that she was there with her girlfriend was that like they all treated her like a man. So then having a girlfriend is no big deal because men have girlfriends. Um anyway, okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, then she starts talking about the study. I mean, most of this is the explanation of how the study was conceived of, what its purpose was, what were the limitations of the study. It's like a lot of pages talking about that kind of stuff. Um, okay. Also, this is the first time in my life where, well, okay, this is the first time since I've been like a turf for the last 7 years that I've heard someone say identity is fluid in a way that didn't immediately get my hackles up and me being like, this is bullshit. Okay, listen to this. Are you ready? Now available. Dude, why is Steam sending me fucking shit? Go away. Jesus Christ. I have to say, the desktop is cool, but like, there's definitely things I need to change. I don't know what's going on a lot of the time. Okay. Um, yeah, Pinwheel says, I wonder if that's why my Mexican friend's parents bought into the trans shit so easily. Rather a son than a lesbian daughter. Yeah, I don't think it's actually anything to do with being Mexican. I think it's because it's a very Catholic country. It's literally the exact same shit you see everywhere. Like you see Pakistan and Iran, what they're doing to the gays. It's like the same shit in all the other religious countries. Just in the West, when we look at Catholic countries, we don't see them in the same way that we look when we look at Muslim countries or Islamic countries. But it's like it's all the same mechanism. It's just like a different version of it. Um, at least that's the way I see it. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read this paragraph because I found it very interesting. Before presenting the data, I must reiterate that both sexuality and ethnicity, regardless of how inborn, born into, or given at birth, are, in fact, a fluid, lifelong process. So let's. What was her definition of identity? Identity here is that which each woman tells herself about who she is and who she is when she is alone to herself. So, they are in fact fluid in a lifelong process, which I think to myself today in terms of either ethnicity or sexuality may not be what I thought yesterday or what I will think tomorrow, because, quote, what each woman thinks of herself, end quote, is what I define as identity for my purposes here. I haven't included those women who consider themselves appropriate participants with the study, yeah, whatever, whatever. But I don't know, just the way she presented it is not stupid, and I liked that. That's my point. Okay. Because it's true, like, even after I accepted that I was a lesbian, I went through days of thinking, like, well, like, I know I'm a lesbian, but will I ever actually have a girlfriend? Probably not. Or, like, you know, I know I'm only attracted to women, but, like, maybe I just haven't tried hard enough. Like, so I did go through, like, like, phases of, like, my self-perception being different even after there was, like, the Rubicon, right? Even after, like, the watershed moment. Um, and obviously with ethnicity, it's much different, right? Like I'm a white person in Canada, so not much to think about with ethnicity, but like for myself. But when she's talking about as a concept of yourself to yourself, like when you're alone, that obviously can change. Like again, like in this book, ethnicity is brought up quite a bit, and it's like, depending on where you're coming from, where you're going, where you are right now, what is the perception, all these things will help. Like, I don't know. I just yeah, I've heard that too. That there is some like really homophobic religions now who kind of do gay marriage as long as they're trans. Yeah. Okay. I would love to interview because I know there's like some not Hasidic, Orthodox. Oh no, it's or is it Messianic? There is some like quite strict um denomination of Judaism which has kind of gone like full trans, even though it's like very, very conservative Judaism. I would love to interview someone who's been in that, a woman, obviously, who's been in that and left, and what their thoughts are on that. Because it's the kind of thing, it's not like you're going to read about it on a blog much, right? It's like a kind of intrapersonal situation. Um, okay. Okay, this characteristics of the group thing, she literally describes like each of the people in the group and what they've been through and what they think and blah blah blah. Um, yeah, when this woman's quote with like the black beans and rice and talk Spanish, that's when I was like, oh, the Anna Simo thing. Um, like this too, this concept here. Quote, although I had been intensely involved with another woman, we both denied it. When I became involved with a woman who defined herself as a lesbian, I thought I was not a lesbian, only quote unquote in love with her. End quote. Okay, this too, I observe it more among women who are raised religiously, but again, it is not specific to Catholicism. You will observe the same thing among Muslim women, Christian women, Jewish women. Well, I talk about Abrahamic religions because that's what I know. I'm sure all religions, even the ones that proclaim to not be patriarchal at all, like in actual practice, you look at the actual like people who have the power and what's going on, they're all patriarchal. Um, well, except for like some micro stuff that's like women centered, but nobody talks about that shit and has no effect on society. So, um, but yeah, like I knew a woman who came from a very conservative culture who slept with a bunch of women from her country, and she was like, all of the women she slept with, their conception of what was going on was something along the lines of like, well, this is just practice, or like, well, this is just like a really like next level masturbation between friends, or like, well, this is like a sex act, but it doesn't mean anything. Like just like the level of like cognitive dissonance of like, this is what I like and I'm going to do this. Sure. But what does it say about me as a person? I'm not one of those people. Like just the level of cognitive dissonance to me is like, I don't know, like inconceivable. Like well, it's cuz like for me personally, once I realized I was attracted to women, it's like impossible to ignore that I was like attracted to them. But to not, yeah, just for practice, I know. But to like be attracted to women to the point where you're actually having sex with them and then to be like I'm not a lesbian. It's very bizarre to me. And I think that it's like an internalization of like the culture around you. Um and obviously the values of the people around you. So like that's why obviously it's not exclusive. Um practice for sleeping with more women, more like yes, I agree, a bird killed. Um but yeah. Um so yeah, I can't really wrap my head around that level of cognitive dissonance, but obviously I know it's like a thing. Um oh my god, Aqua. I had this English teacher in grade 9. My god, what the fuck was his name? Well, either way. He was a very good English teacher. And he was like my homeroom first class of the day teacher, and every single day we started the school day with like an article from the news being like, yo, like a current event, like what's this? What are your opinions and thoughts? And that was like when I really started to like pay attention to what's going on around me, not to like an insane extent. I was like a self-involved teenager. But um yeah. And so like over the years I got really into that. Then when I got to university, I was like I don't have the energy. Like I literally stopped reading fiction because I was like I'm reading so many books like for school that I was like I don't have the fucking like brain power. But I don't know. I feel like I've gotten like very like emotionally or intellect something like raw. Like when the Taliban in Afghanistan, when that happened, like I just like turned off. I was like, I ca- what, like I can't do anything. What am I supposed to do? Like yeah, I know what you mean. It's like whenever you look at the news, it's bad news, and so it's like it's almost like every time you make the choice to open the news, you are making the choice to like make yourself upset, or you're making the choice to like put yourself in a bad mood for the rest of the day. Um, yeah, Grey Witch. I guess it is comparable to that. Grey Witch is saying it's so weird to me how many women will be down for having sex with women, but they have attachment in their mind. They're bisexual, not biromantic. That basically like they're willing to have sex with men and women, but they're only willing to date. But that's like so common, and also among men. Like there's so many bisexual men who are like that. Like I know this from when I was like a gay trans man, um, because I was a TIFF specifically is how I found out. So I'll be like chatting up dudes on Grinder or FetLife or where to have you. Don't go on these. Don't do that. And they'll be like, yeah, like I'm a gay guy. I'm into guys. Then they will like, we will like match with each other, and then we would get to talking, and they'd be like, oh yeah, like I sleep with women and men, but like I don't consider myself bi or something. And I was like, what? Or like, oh, yeah, like I wouldn't like date a woman. I mean, a man, but I would like sleep with them. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize it's like pretty common. I think that the reason we don't hear about it as much from men though is because men, when they're like in a gay space, they'll just say like, oh yeah, I'm gay. And like to not have to answer questions or think about it or talk about it. And then when they leave that space, they're like, yep, I'm straight. It's like a very like there's like more of a duality to it than women, I think, a lot of the times. Anyway. Oh yeah, in the media. Okay, well, this is like a whole other discussion though. Okay. Journalism being garbage. Okay. Okay, then this I also found interesting. So this is the woman who doesn't want to call herself a lesbian, but felt, you know, like it was appropriate for her to fill out this lesbian survey. She says, quote, no, my sexual preference also my hackles went up at the sexual preference. It's hard to like you have to keep in mind this wasn't like okay. Does not rule my life. Right out the gate, I'm kind of like, what does that mean? Like what I guess she's around a lot of like the pre-wokes who it's like everything about like their lifestyle is that they're gay, which like fair enough. There can be too much of anything, but okay. I like women, I love women. That is called being a lesbian, but I don't define myself as one. So this is in spite of these words, this woman who at 40 years old had been out for 18 years chose to answer the questionnaire knowing that it was about lesbians. Um Remember in the last essay when the author was like, "Yeah, we need to like include like the diversity of the lesbian experience," and to her that meant including bisexual women or like even women who only have sex with men who call themselves lesbians. And I was like, but that's not like diversity within lesbianism. That's just like diversity of female sexuality generally. This is diversity of lesbianism. Lesbians who have different ways of conceiving of themselves, different ways of labeling or defining themselves, but in actuality are in the same category as women who would call themselves a lesbian. This is diversity of lesbian experience. Okay, anyway. This also I found interesting. This one woman, when they were asking them about, like, if you had to choose one, like your Cuban identity or your lesbian, like which one would you choose? Or which one was more important? And then the one woman, like, una pregunta muy difícil, she was like, what is it? Here, this is how she ended her quote. I can still be Cuban if I'm around Americans. That I found very interesting because, so when she's around Americans, I'm assuming like white Anglos, right? And she walks in and they're like, oh yeah, you're Cuban. We know you speak Spanish and whatever Cuban cultural things, right? So she is like acknowledged and seen as a Cuban, even though they are not Cuban, and I'm sure they have like racist tendencies and whatever, right? But you flip the situation. She is now in a Latino space. Do they see her as you're a lesbian? That's like nothing to do with us. We don't know much about it, but we know you're a lesbian. No. When she's in the Latino space, this woman, the way she describes it, it seems to me at least, is she doesn't have that. So to me, it's like a lot of these women. What did I say at the beginning of this? That it was less about like straddling the fence and more about like picking which side to be on. Not like, I don't even know if the concept of the fence applies, but you know what I mean. But this woman, the way she describes that to me really seems like the fence straddling position to have then. Like the author, Olivia Espín, says, like Latinos don't really want to acknowledge or accept lesbianism, like generally as a culture. They'd prefer to like ignore it or explain it away or rationalize it away or something. Um, but obviously, it depends. But obviously, there are like non-Latinos who acknowledge and accept and like and even fetishize Latinos, like to a negative extent. So like there is like a breadth of space in there that at this point when she wrote the essay, there is not that breadth of space. I mean, at least among the respondents in the Latino community. I mean, I'm sure it's very different now. And like again, I'm sure it really depends who you are, who you're hanging out with, and where you are. But I just found that interesting. Okay. Um, Also, like this one woman, her answer to the question um, showed her ambivalence, but also pain and anger associated with choosing between the different parts of herself. Just the way she discusses it here, like clearly straight people don't even get asked this question, and it's unfair that we have to discuss it, even if it's just a questionnaire. It's like she gets actually offended, which to me is like a signal she has like a fully integrated sense of self. Because if you have cognitive dissonance and you've separated like your senses of self are compartmentalized, then if somebody asks you something about one that is necessarily precludes the other, you can easily access that, right? But to her, everything is so integrated that to ask her about one thing that necessitates the ignorance of the others, to her, this is like an offensive, like it's not even like neutral or confusion. It's like a negative response to this kind of um, question. I just thought that was like a really interesting contrast from the other women, some of the other women. Um, I also there's this one point where like when she's asking them, choose like Latina or lesbian, and one of the women replied, "I feel comfortable with my people, gay or not," which is like Latinos. And I was kind of like, isn't there kind of a middle ground option between like only lesbians of any ethnicity and any person of Latino ethnicity, couldn't there be like an intermediary option, which is like all Latina women? Like, maybe I'm splitting hairs, but to me, like when they said my people, like when I hear the term my people, I think of lesbians. Um, and I'm sure for other people, when they hear the term my people, they think of something else, right? But I know a fair amount of lesbians of minority ethnicity who, when they're asked, who are my people, their thought is not lesbians, or it's more like women, but like specifically the women of my culture or my ethnicity that I prioritize. So I was kind of like, that might have been an interesting avenue to explore. But anyway, okay. Oh yeah, and this other woman was like, I refuse to even postulate such a possibility. Yeah. My people's the neighborhood dogs. um, the neighborhood where I'm moving has like, it's very bougie. It has like a lot of dogs. And I think like, people with money who seem to have a lot of time, that kind of people, like they wouldn't hire a dog walker because like it's like a leisure activity to hang out with their dog. I think that's kind of what it's like in my new neighborhood. So I'm planning to spend a lot of time looking out my window, getting to know the dog. There's a neighbor cat. There is a cat owned by one of the neighbors where I live right now, but it's like a whole drama because Momo and Squeaky will like try to run out the door and then the cat is there and the cat is like an outdoor cat. It's like very dramatic. Oh, Marina. So you and Toss Stones, you are like of a people because you're both gardenings peoples. Puzzle person, you're in America, right? The place that I grew up in Toronto, the neighborhood I grew up in Toronto had like so many feral cats. We like every single summer or spring or whatever, I don't know, it was little. We got like these big like trap cage things, put like cat food in them. It was like a whole freaking thing. And then we would like load the van with like 10 of these cages of cats and bring them to the Humane Society. I was never like involved much with that, but I saw my parents like putting them. Anyway, there's one cat in my like neighborhood who there is like a guy, I guess he's from like down the street or something. There's like this little kind of like wall along the sidewalk on like one part of my neighborhood, and this guy will like walk with his cat and the cat is on a leash and the cat is like on the wall and the guy is walking and so they're like almost at the same level. It's so cute. When I first got Momo, I tried to teach her how to walk on a leash. Like I looked up like tutorials of how to like teach your cat and get them used to it and stuff, but Momo is not really into that. Um, Yeah, my neighbor cat does the same thing. Like whenever people walk out of the door on my street, this cat will like run up to the door and start screaming at them because I think if it's cold or if these people have food, they will like give it to the cat. And now the cat's like, everybody give me love because like their owner is a piece of shit. Anyway, okay. Oh yeah. Then another thing. So remember how it was like, even like within like the Anglo-American context, you can still like be a Cuban, be perceived as a Cuban, even if it's not like in the same way, or I don't know why I said Cuban specifically. Well, she talks about Cuban specifically. You can still be Latina. You can't hide your ethnicity, obviously, right? So then she is like, this is another like aspect or a factor of what's going on is that it is possible for women if they are like Latina hanging out with in like Latino communities to hide that they're lesbians. So they have the option to do that. The inverse is not true, right? For a Latina lesbian to go into the non-Latino community and blend in as a non-Latino would be like impossible most of the time, a lot of the time. Um, well, there's obviously gray area there. Ethnicity is like kind of broad topic, but okay. I have to say, like, maybe it's because we're in the identity section of the book, but so far, both of the essays, which I guess I know it's not like a huge sample size, but so far, both of the essays are pretty, like, even this one, which is more like concise and prescriptive, even this essay, still extremely vague. Like, when she gets to the psychotherapy part, which is 1 page out of a 15-page essay about like therapy, um, she's like, lesbians come to therapy like anybody else for a lot of different reasons. And I was like, well, yeah, but I thought you were going to pick one reason and talk about that, like specific to therapy. Like, I don't know. The therapist should keep in mind that there is as much danger in explaining individual differences away as culturally determined as there is in ignoring or rejecting the impact of cultural influences on each woman's choices. So is she trying to say that when Latina lesbians go to therapy, that therapists might be trying to help them like accept their lesbianism by encouraging them to reject Latin community and values? That's quite believable to me. Makes a lot of sense. So the conclusion of the essay basically is like, you know, you need to help them explore. I'll just read the rest of like the last paragraph. So that was the first phrase of the last paragraph. As always in therapy, validation of each woman's identity and of all the components of her total self is provided through the expansion of feeling states and encouragement to understand their meaning. To understand the multiplicity of tasks involved in identity development for Latina lesbians and to provide the opportunity for the accomplishment of those tasks is the first step in therapy with Latina lesbians. So I'm just looking through the notes. Okay. Yeah, I found to be honest, just because I'm like so, you know, focused on trans medicine and trans data, I don't know much about the soft sciences. Like this woman is like what is it? A counseling professor or something. I guess that's like a soft science. It's not like medicine, right? Like you can't like do a blood test for anxiety. But like I did find it like kind of strange that she was like, "Yeah, so I sent out 35 surveys and 16 of them got answered and I wrote a whole essay about that." I'm like, "That's a very small sample size." Like and I get that she did like quant instead of qual and all that, but it still seems to me like I wish she could have been like, "Here's my observation of like 100 women." Because I feel like I just feel like that would have been more solid. It felt to me very like the whole like thing was built on like a very like shaky premise. But I mean, who knows? Maybe from her perspective, it was like she had things to say that she knew anecdotally, and she was like, I want to have some like things to look and point at and say like, look, right? You know what I mean? It might have been the opposite of what I'm saying. That she was get this is her getting the more solid information instead of just speculating what she thinks. But yeah. Um. Okay. So I'm just gonna glance through the survey quickly. I scanned it. I showed it up on the screen at the end of the essay. So if you want to go back to that video, you can pause it and look. Um. So something that she mentioned, like now looking through the survey, I'm remembering when she was going through all the statistics, was that basically all of, if I'm remembering correctly, basically all the lesbians came out after they got to America. So clearly, but also to keep in mind that this book was published in 1987, and a bunch of the women who, when they emigrated to America, was like in the 50s. So imagine being a lesbian in Cuba in the 50s, even in America in the 50s, in the 60s, is not a very great thing. Um, okay, this is interesting. So she has the question: do you identify as a Cuban? Yes, because, no, because. Do you identify as a lesbian? Yes, because, no, because. Okay. Then, does living in the US have any effect on you as a lesbian? Oh, no, she does have the equivalent in Cuban. Okay, I thought it was only in one, and I was like, that's weird. Why doesn't she have both? Okay. I don't know. It's an interesting survey. Very basic. Okay, so I'll be honest with you guys. I am very tired now that I'm like sitting here for 2 hours or whatever. Also, I got another book. This is a book that I think you will have a very hard time getting your hands on. It is also, like, out of print. Um, it is from the publication is just called Queer Press. Um, it's 1994. Uh, so the woman who lent me this book is insane. Literally, the last section of the book is like, well, this is all about AIDS stuff specifically, and there's like resources at the end of the book that are like, oh, like, are you struggling like as a woman with cancer? Like, here's like support groups and doctors. Or wait, no, this is not the end of the book. Here it is. Look, bookstores for lesbians. Okay, and two of them are crossed out. Holy shit. These all just in Canada? Holy shit. Jesus fuck. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14. There's 14 women's bookstores listed in Ontario alone. Okay, so the only one still in operation is Glad Day. This one. It's not a women's bookstore. It's not like a queer woke bullshit bookstore. Um, this other one, Northern Women's Bookstore. This I think is the last actual women's bookstore in Canada to have closed. Like, there's none left in Canada now. I think that Northern Women's Bookstore, which is this is in Thunder Bay. There's one either in Thunder Bay, Ontario, or Sudbury. I thought it was in somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Well, as a Torontonian, that's what I think. Was the last actual women's bookstore in Canada to be around, and I think it closed like within the last 5 or 10 years. Um. Anyway, my point was, then look. I mean, I guess this is the 90s. There's like a list of women's book publishers to contact. Look at this list of women's book publishers. That was only Canadians. Now this is American. A Journal for Black Lesbians. Amethyst. Just publishes gay and lesbian fiction and poetry. Wow. Whoa. It's just crazy to look at all these, like, and vaguely recognize some of them. Dykes and Disability. That would have been interesting to read. Broomstick, a national magazine for women over 40. It includes essays and short stories and encourages the readers' networking and participation. It's just crazy, like, Girl Jock, lesbian sports magazine. Like, look at all these different publications. All of these are periodicals. Like, pages and pages and pages of them. And they're all dead. They're all gone. Uh, Women in Therapy. That would have been interesting. Anyway, I just think this book is like very unique and cool. So it's all about health. So there's like sections. Even like the formatting of the book is very 90s. Okay, there's a section called Body Image and Eating Disorders. There's a section called Emotional Health. There's a section called Living Well. There's one called Life Cycles that goes all the way from like getting your first menstruation to like menopause. Addiction and drug use, dealing with disease, relationships, social systems, and then the resources. The resources is like just so much stuff. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was like a very unique book. So we probably won't read all of that. It's like pretty huge, but parts of it. Okay. So my plan with books for the next while is so we've read 2 of the 5 essays on identity. I would like to power through and keep reading these until we get through the identity section. Then I'm going to make sure that we finish this because I actually don't really want to be reading 2 books at the same time on my channel. And then after we're finished this, I think we're going to read some Sarah Hoagland. I think we're going to read like Lesbian Ethics by Sarah Hoagland, which should be kind of comparable to the Marilyn Fry. Yeah. Then I think after Sarah Hoagland, we're going to read This Bridge Called My Back. But I'm not 1,000% sure because remember how when I started reading this, I had like a very clear plan of which book was next, and now it's not that book anymore. So anyway. Okay. Benji, do you have gynecology? I have like a virtual copy on my iPad. I haven't read the whole thing through though. I know I really should. Um, I think it's the kind of thing that I'll, like, listen to the audiobook on a road trip. Um, I'm not sure. I definitely, like, read part of it in a philosophy class, and the way it was presented was like, "This is what the evil feminists say." I was like, "Okay." Um, anyway. Okay, I'm very tired now. Now I'm, like, rambling about nothing. So, I'm gonna let you guys go. Tomorrow thank you, Aqua. Tomorrow, Sister Space. Yeah, with me and Rachel. It is at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time, 5 p.m. London Time. So you figure out where you live, what time zone what it is for you. Um, Thank you to all of the women, Corner, Mad Adam, Aqua, Kaz, Julia, Grey Witch, Dragon, Bird Killed Me, Puzzle Person, anybody else I missed. Thank you for showing up. I will see you and Rachel tomorrow at, well, noon for me. Okay. Okay. Bye, guys. See you. Have a great night.